Hello, OMG Pickleball Club members. Today we're going to talk about some rule changes put in place by USA Pickleball. We're not going to discuss all the changes because there's a ton of them, but we are going to discuss the 4 that we think are the most important to us. The first of these is the line calls. When do you call a ball out? Secondly, let serves. Will a let serve be a dead ball to be reserved in the future? And then, how about calling the score during the serve? And one really cool one is the drop serve, a totally different way to serve the ball. This rule applies to calling a ball in or out, or line calls. The original rule was based loosely on what happens to a tennis ball versus what happens to a pickleball when it strikes the court. If you look at this tennis ball, you can see that it is actually out of bounds, just very slightly out of bounds. However, when a tennis ball strikes, it will compress. And when that ball compresses, actually, it is now in bounds, or a good ball. Let's compare that to a pickleball. A pickleball does not compress when it hits the court because it's such a hard surface on the ball. I have placed this pickleball where it is slightly out. So this would be a legitimate out call under the old rule, even though if you look at the ball from the side, it would appear as though it is in bounds, but it's really not. There is a very slight gap at the base of the ball. You can see how this could cause confusion and cause a lot of bad calls if people were trying to be really discreet about where that line was and where the ball hit. The new rule states that the ball must be clearly out in order to make an out call. So in this case, you can clearly see a gap between the base of the ball and the line. That is clearly out. If I move that ball there, now that becomes a little bit more debatable. Yes, it's still out, but it's pretty close. So they are saying you really should see clearly whether the ball is in or out. Be gracious with your calls. You want your opponents to be gracious with their calls for you. And here's what I would live by. If the gap between the line and the base of the ball is too thin, call it in. If the gap is too thin, call it in. A let ball is a ball that is served, clips the net, but continues into the receiver's court. Under the existing rules, that ball is considered a dead ball, and it is reserved. Under the new rules, a let ball is not considered a dead ball. If it lands into the kitchen, it's considered a fault. If a ball strikes the net and lands anywhere in the legal serving area of the receiving team, it must be played. There's a new rule change about when you must call the score prior to the serve. The existing rule that we have today is you must call the entire score before you begin your service motion. The new rule is, beginning in January, you can be in the service motion while you're calling your score, as long as you strike the ball after you completed the call of the score. So let's compare the two. Here's the serve during the current rule. 2-4-2. Here's how you could serve with the new rule. 2-4-2. As long as I complete the score before I strike the ball, Even though I'm in motion, that's a valid serve. Now, what does this mean for you as a player? If you're on the receiving end, you better be ready sooner, because there's not going to be as much time between the call of the score and the actual serve. The last rule change that we're going to talk about is called the drop serve. The drop serve is a new way of serving. It's a provisional rule, which means that it's been put in place for 2021, but may not continue after that test period. It's also an alternate rule, which means that all of the rules still apply to the current method of serving. However, this drop serve may be used as an alternative to that current method. Probably the biggest thing to remember with the drop serve is it is not a bounce serve, it is a drop serve. So you can apply no downward pressure when you drop the ball. In other words, you can't bounce it by applying downward pressure. You have to drop the ball, which means you probably have to start pretty high to drop that ball so it'll bounce high enough for you to serve it. So here's a sample. Now think about the rules for the existing serve. The serve must be in an upward motion. It can't be served any higher than your waist. And your paddle must be below your wrist or pointed down. So you can't serve like that with your wrist pointed up. On the alternative method of the drop serve, those rules go away. So if you did a drop serve and came down low, you could actually come in at an angle like this. You potentially could put much more spin on the ball. As far as the ball bouncing higher than your waist, I really doubt that that's going to happen. It doesn't have enough bounce to get up that high. So that rule just really wouldn't apply. So let's do a couple of low bounces and hitting it down low with the bounce serve. The difference is going to be that you're hitting it low, the ball is going to be having more of an upward trajectory, a faster trajectory, and you could put more spin on the ball. This serve could also be used by someone who can't reach out with their left arm. You could place the ball on paddle, drop it, and make your serve. Well, we hope this brief explanation of those important rule changes was helpful to you. Make sure you follow these guidelines and try that new drop serve. It's kind of fun. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. We'll answer them and respond as soon as we can.